Imagine the thick, humid air of Alexandria in late summer, heavy with the scent of the Nile and the distant roar of the Mediterranean. The great hippodrome stands packed, dust rising from thousands of feet as crowds press forward, eager for spectacle. In the center, chained and huddled, stand hundreds of young women, daughters of priests, guardians of the temple's sacred rites, faces pale, eyes wide with quiet defiance. Above them, on the royal platform, a king watches with cold satisfaction. He has ordered this moment, not for sport, not for conquest, but to break something deeper than bodies, to shatter a people's covenant with their God. What you're about to hear involves attempted sexual violence as a weapon of cultural erasure. These events come from ancient accounts that are debated among historians, but the pain they describe is real in its intent. If this is too much, I understand. For those staying, remember, we focus on the system behind the cruelty, not the cruelty itself. This wasn't random rage. This wasn't one man's madness. This was a calculated machine designed to erase a faith that refused to bend. And at its heart stood one king, Ptolemy IV, a ruler who had just won the greatest battle of his life, only to turn his victory into a war against purity itself. The Ptolemaic Empire stretched from the Nile Delta to the edges of Syria, a glittering web of Greek cities overlaid on ancient Egyptian soil. Alexandria, its crown, pulsed with life, merchants from India unloading spices, scholars debating in the great library, temples rising to gods old and new. For nearly a century, Jews had thrived here. Brought by the first Ptolemies as soldiers and settlers, they built synagogues along the canals, raised families who spoke Greek yet kept the Sabbath, and served loyally in the king's armies. They were not outsiders. They were part of the empire's strength, but empires demand loyalty in return. And loyalty, for a Ptolemaic king, meant more than taxes or troops. It meant sharing in the divine theater of rule. Ptolemy IV, like his fathers, styled himself a living god, linked especially to Dionysus, the wild, ecstatic deity of wine and rebirth. Festivals in his honor filled the streets with revelry, ivy crowns, and rituals that blurred the line between mortal and divine. Most subjects joined willingly. It was the path to favor, to citizenship, to belonging. The Jews did not. They had their own god, one without image or excess. Their priests served in a distant temple. Their laws forbade certain rites. They paid their taxes, fought in the phalanx, but when invited to Dionysus's mysteries, they politely declined. To many Greeks, this looked like arrogance. To the king, after one humiliating moment, it looked like defiance. Our story begins not in Alexandria, but on a dusty plain near Gaza. The year is 217 before the Common Era. Ptolemy IV, young, indulgent, surrounded by flatterers, faces his greatest test. Antiochus the Great, king of the Seleucids, has invaded, aiming to seize the rich lands of Coele Syria. Armies clash at Raphia in one of the largest battles the ancient world had seen. 70,000 on the Egyptian side, including native troops armed for the first time in generations. Elephants thunder across the sand, African beasts on Ptolemy's flanks, larger Indian ones for Antiochus. The fight is brutal. Dust chokes the air, trumpets blare, phalanxes lock shields. On the right, Ptolemy's sister-wife Arsinoe rallies the troops, her voice cutting through the chaos. In the center, the Egyptian phalanx holds, and when the dust settles, Ptolemy stands victorious. Antiochus flees. The empire is saved. Victory should have brought celebration. Instead, it brought hubris. Ptolemy tours his reconquered lands, offering thanks at local temples. He reaches Jerusalem. The city opens its gates in gratitude, an ally's king after all. He visits the great temple on its hill, awed by its beauty, its gold, its mystery. He offers sacrifices according to Jewish custom. All seems well. Then he announces his desire to enter the innermost sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest may go, and only once a year. The priests plead, the people gather in panic. This is not curiosity, this is violation. The space holds the very presence of their God. A foreign king, self-proclaimed divine, cannot enter without defiling it utterly. Accounts differ on what happened next. Some say he pressed forward regardless. Others the divine power struck him down, paralyzed, carried out speechless. Whatever the truth, the refusal burned in him, not just denied entry, but publicly humbled before his entourage. Back in Alexandria, the sting festered. But that wasn't the worst part. Ptolemy returned changed. The man who had celebrated victory now nursed grievance. Whispers spread through the court. The Jews had insulted the king. Their God had rejected him. Their separateness was not loyalty. It was treason. The machine began to turn. First came decrees. All Jews in the kingdom must register. Those who wish to remain citizens must prove devotion to Dionysus, accept initiation into his mysteries, bear his mark. Refusal meant loss of status, property, freedom. Many complied quietly. Survival demanded it. But others, especially the pious, the priestly families, refused. Among them were young women dedicated to the temple service in Jerusalem, descended from priestly lines. Some had taken vows of purity, living lives set apart for sacred duties. Tradition called them virgins of the temple, not nuns in our sense, but women whose untouched state symbolized Israel's covenant fidelity. Word reached Alexandria. A group of these women, perhaps visiting family or caught in the registration, had defied the order. They would not participate in rites that mocked their faith. Ptolemy saw opportunity, not just punishment, but humiliation. A message to every Jew: your God cannot protect what is most sacred. He ordered them brought to the palace, not for execution, at first, for something worse. The demand was simple and devastating: submit to defilement. Guards, chosen for loyalty and cruelty, would violate their purity, force them into acts that would forever bar them from temple service, shatter their vows, brand them as broken before their people. One young woman steps forward in the accounts, a priest's daughter named Miriam, barely 20, raised in Jerusalem's shadow. She had dreamed of one day serving in the women's court, weaving curtains or preparing offerings. Now she stood in marble halls that smelled of incense and fear. She looked at the king, not with hatred, but with steady sorrow. "Our bodies may be in your power," she said, voice clear though trembling, "but our covenant is not." The others echoed her. No pleas for mercy, no bargains, just refusal. The king hesitated. These were not rebels with swords. They were girls whose only weapon was faith. But hesitation turned to rage. If refusal, then force. Yet something shifted. Perhaps a dream. Perhaps the weight of what he planned. Perhaps whispers from advisors who saw danger in alienating an entire people. The order was never carried out. But the threat lingered. The women were held, paraded as warnings, and the system expanded. Act 2 unfolded not in palaces, but across the empire. Registration turned to roundup. Jews who refused Dionysus faced branding, like cattle, with his ivy leaf. Families lost homes, synagogues closed. In the Fayum, entire villages emptied as people fled south. From the perpetrator's view, it made sense. Unity required shared gods. Refusal bred division. Sosibius. The king's chief minister, a sharp-eyed courtier who had orchestrated murders to secure the throne, fed the paranoia. Reports came in. Jews loyal in war, but stubborn in worship. Better to break them now. A witness might have been a Greek scribe in the bureaucracy, watching scrolls pile up with names. Day after day. Families dragged in, children crying, elders quoting ancient laws. He noted the irony. The king who armed Egyptians at Raphia to win a war now feared the loyalty of those who fought beside them. One quiet moment stands out. In a holding courtyard, an old merchant shares bread with a guarded family. "We have lived here generations," he says softly. "Paid taxes, served kings. Why now?" The guard shrugs. Orders from above. The escalation built slowly. Rumors of mass punishment. Elephants gathered. Not for war, but spectacle. The hippodrome prepared. All Jews of Alexandria to be herded there, trampled by beasts maddened with wine. But Miriam and her sisters remained the breaking point. Their refusal spread. Priests in hiding sent messages. Hold fast. Purity is not lost by force, only by choice. The climax came on a day thick with heat. The hippodrome filled. Jews packed in the arena below. Elephants trumpeting. Handlers pouring wine down their trunks. Ptolemy on his throne, face flushed with drink and anticipation. Time slowed, the gates opened, beasts charged, but not toward the Jews. Something, call it miracle, mass hallucination, or divine hand, turned them. Elephants wheeled, crashing into guards, trampling the king's own men. Chaos, screams. The crowd fled in panic. Ptolemy watched his machine shatter. In the aftermath, reversal came swiftly. Perhaps fear of rebellion, perhaps genuine remorse. Decrees revoked, Jews freed, privileges restored, even a feast ordered in their honor. Miriam and the women returned home. Vows unbroken in spirit, though scars remained. The community celebrated quietly. A day of deliverance marked each year. Ptolemy died young, poisoned perhaps by his own court. The empire weakened, native revolt simmered. His son inherited a throne cracked by overreach. Modern eyes see echoes. In archives and fragments, we find traces. Papyri mentioning Jewish rights under Ptolemies. Debates over citizenship in Alexandria. No mass elephant execution confirmed. No defilement of 2,000 virgins proven. But the fear was real. The refusal to assimilate, real. The line between tolerance and demand for conformity, thin as ever. What this teaches is simple yet profound. Power fears what it cannot control. Faith, quietly held, can outlast empires. Those women, unnamed in most records, but remembered in story, stood not with armies, but with conviction. They were meant to disappear, broken, forgotten, absorbed, but they didn't. Their story survived in scrolls, carried through centuries, passed in whispers when assimilation pressed hard, read in synagogues when new kings demanded old compromises. And now it's here with you, because you chose to listen. If this moved you, leave a comment. Purity endures. Share the one lesson this history holds for today. In the end, the story lives because we keep it alive.